Some stories are just stories, campfire tales, words on a page. But some stories refuse to be forgotten, lingering long after the fire has died down. The legend of the Bell Witch is one of those stories. It's haunted Tennessee for over 2 centuries, a shadow that refuses to fade. People say the Bell Witch is more than a ghost. She's a presence that can reach out and touch the living. My name is Alex. Drawn to the strange, I sought out the Bell Witch legend, a tale of a malevolent entity that tormented a family for years. I pored over old newspaper clippings and faded photographs, tracing the path of fear through Adams, Tennessee. I decided to visit Adams, Tennessee to see the land and feel the history for myself. The closer I got, the more I felt the weight of the legend pressing in, as if the story itself was watching me. The drive was filled with anticipation, my mind replaying the brutal events of the legend. As the landscape grew wilder, the sky darkened, and it felt like I was traveling back in time. My goal, the Bell Witch Cave, said to be the heart of the legend's power. I packed my camera and recorder hoping to capture proof. I wanted to believe, but I needed evidence. I told myself I was prepared. But you can never truly be ready for a darkness that's been waiting centuries. The air felt thick, as if the night itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to take the next step. A darkness, always looking for someone new to listen. And as I stood at the edge, I realized the story wasn't finished. It was just waiting for me to become a part of it. Arriving in Adams felt like stepping into a living ghost story. The air was thick with a kind of tension you could almost taste, as if the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Every building seemed to lean in, whispering secrets from behind weathered brick and peeling paint. The town was small, quiet, and heavy with secrets. At a diner, mentioning the Bell Witch Cave changed the mood instantly. Conversations faltered, and eyes darted away, as if the very name carried a curse. The clink of coffee cups and the hum of the old jukebox suddenly felt ominous, echoing in the uneasy silence that followed. The waitress leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Be careful out there. She doesn't like to be disturbed." An old man, hunched in the corner, muttered, "Some things are best left alone." Their warnings weren't just superstition. They felt like a ritual, a way to keep something at bay. I felt the chill of being an outsider, trespassing on ground that wasn't meant for me. As I left the diner and drove toward the cave, the landscape grew more isolated, the silence pressing in from all sides. The road twisted through dense woods, each turn swallowing more of the fading daylight, and the sense of foreboding deepened with every mile. The sun barely pierced the thick canopy, shadows stretching across the path. At the cave entrance, a simple sign marked the spot, weathered and almost swallowed by the encroaching forest. It felt less like a welcome and more like a warning, a final reminder that I was crossing into a place where the rules of the ordinary world no longer applied. The air was colder, the place eerily still. Standing there, I felt a powerful hesitation, as if the land itself was warning me. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant call of a crow. Every instinct told me to turn back, but curiosity pulled me forward, deeper into the unknown. My excitement was now mixed with real dread. The stories I'd heard suddenly felt all too real, and I wondered if I was truly prepared for what waited in the darkness ahead. The trail to the cave felt like a passage into another world. The air grew colder, the silence absolute. I turned on my recorder, my voice barely a whisper. The cave's entrance was a black wound in the rock, swallowing all light. Inside, the world narrowed to the beam of my flashlight and the echo of my breath. I asked the darkness, "Is anyone here? Kate Batts?" For a moment, nothing, just cold stone and dripping water. Then, a sudden sharp drop in temperature. My breath hung in the air. I stepped forward, the cold intensified. Back, a little warmer. Then a faint, guttural whisper from the rock. A woman's voice. My blood ran cold. My heart pounded. I strained to hear the whisper again. I held up my recorder, asking, "Who's there?" Silence pressed in, broken only by the chilling cold spot. I pushed deeper into the cave, the sense of being watched growing unbearable. The whisper returned, clearer. "Get!" It was a command, not a plea. Panic surged. I spun, shining my light, nothing but wet stone. Then, right beside my ear, "I know you, Alex." Hearing my name shattered my skepticism. I bolted, stumbling out into the humid air, shaken to my core. Back at my motel I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. I realized I'd disturbed something ancient, and leaving Adams might not be enough to escape it. The haunting had only just begun. Lying awake, I thought of the Bell family's ordeal. Their haunting began subtly: knocks, strange sounds, confusion. The entity, calling itself the Witch of Kate Batts, escalated to physical attacks, focusing on young Betsy. Witnesses, even Andrew Jackson, experienced the witch's torment. Its voice grew stronger, cursing, quoting sermons, revealing secrets. It promised to torment John Bell until his death. This was no mindless ghost. It was intelligent, cruel, relentless. The whisper I heard echoed the Bell family's terror. I'd gone seeking a legend, but what I found was terrifyingly present. The entity was awake, and I had introduced myself. The night in the motel was a descent into paranoia. Around 2 a.m., I heard it, a slow, deliberate knocking from inside the wall. I tried to record it, but the sound stopped, then started again from another wall. The entity was toying with me, letting me know it had followed me from the cave. I sat in a chair, eyes wide, feeling watched. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound a threat. Dawn brought no relief, just a pause in the terror. I packed in a rush, desperate to leave Adams behind. I checked out without a word, feeling like a fugitive. I thought distance would save me. But the fear clung to me, a shadow I couldn't outrun. I was no longer just a visitor to the legend. I was part of it. The drive away from Adams was a blur of paranoia. Every patch of woods felt menacing, every song on the radio a reminder of fear. My phone rang, an unknown Tennessee number. I declined, but it rang again. Could it be the witch? The thought chilled me. I turned my phone off, unable to face the possibility. The sense of being watched never left, even as I crossed state lines. At home, I tried to convince myself it was over. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished. The fear had followed me. My journey with the Bell Witch was far from over. For a few days at home, there was silence. I started to relax. But on the fourth night, the knocking returned, this time from my bedroom closet. The entity had followed me home. The phenomena escalated. Knocking moved around the house, cabinet doors slammed open. My computer glitched with the word "get" repeated endlessly. My home became a prison of fear. I couldn't sleep, lost weight, and withdrew from friends. I was too afraid to stay, too terrified to leave. How could I explain I was being haunted by a 200-year-old witch? The fear was relentless, and I wondered if I was losing my mind. The legend was no longer just a story, it was my reality. I was trapped, and there was no escape. The haunting was only growing stronger, and I was utterly alone. The haunting became personal. My phone rang with calls from unknown caller. At first I thought it was a prank, some glitch in the system, but the calls kept coming. Always at night, always when I was alone. The screen would light up in the darkness, casting long shadows across my room, and my heart would pound as I stared at the name that never changed. Static, raspy breathing and voicemails of heavy silence reminded me it was always there. Sometimes I'd hear a faint whisper just out of reach, as if someone was trying to speak but couldn't quite cross the boundary between worlds. The silence on the line was heavier than any scream. Then came the visions, fleeting images of the cave, a shadow in the mirror, a terrified girl I knew was Betsy Bell. These weren't dreams, they were memories, not my own, but forced into my mind like a warning. I'd wake up gasping, the echo of her fear still clinging to me. The entity was showing me its past, warning me of my future. Each vision grew more vivid, more urgent, as if it needed me to understand the pain it carried, and the danger I was in. I didn't know what it wanted, maybe nothing but fear, or maybe it wanted to be remembered, to make sure its story was never forgotten. The dread became a constant companion, following me from room to room. My curiosity had made me part of the legend. I had read too much, asked too many questions, and now I was tangled in the web of the Bell Witch, unable to escape. My life became a cycle of waiting for the next knock, the next call, the next vision. Every night I braced myself for the unknown, never sure what form the haunting would take next. I write this as a warning. Some stories are not meant to be explored. Curiosity can be a curse, and some doors once opened can never be closed again. The darkness in that house was alive. It pressed down on you, stealing the air from your lungs. I remember lying in bed, eyes wide, listening for the next sound. The house was never quiet, creaks, whispers, cold drafts that shouldn't exist. Dread was constant, a low hum that never faded. I tried to blame it on the house being old, but this was different. It felt like a presence, watching from every shadow. The air was thick with something ancient and angry. We were intruders, and the house wanted us gone. Sometimes the silence was worse than the noise, anticipation suffocating. A door would slam, a foul smell would appear and vanish. The house fed on our fear, growing stronger with every sleepless night. I'd stare into the darkness, sometimes seeing shapes that vanished when I blinked. All I had was fear, a cold companion every single night. We arrived on a sunny afternoon, but the house felt wrong. Its famous windows looked peaceful, but we knew the stories. The price was a dream come true, a beautiful home on the water. We thought we could fill it with light, chase away the shadows. Sarah was optimistic, planning gardens and rooms. The kids laughed, running up and down the stairs. For a moment it felt like any other move. We ignored the unease, dismissed the movers' nervous glances. Even in sunlight, cold spots lingered, one in the living room, another at the stairs. We joked about drafts, desperate to believe we hadn't made a mistake. The house's history felt distant, unreal. But the horror was in the walls, soaked into the wood. We thought we were buying a home, but it was a tomb. Happiness didn't last long. The house was just waiting for the sun to set. The first signs were small, flies in the sewing room, even in the cold. We'd swat them away, but they always returned. Then came the smells, sweet perfume, then a swampy stench. The house was testing us, seeing what we'd ignore. Noises followed. Tapping windows, doors opening and closing on their own. I started waking at 3:15 a.m., drenched in terror. Cold spots grew sharper. The kids complained of freezing rooms. Mia had nightmares about a man with black eyes. The feeling of being watched was constant, prickling the back of your neck. We stopped making excuses and started sharing our fear. The house wasn't just making noise, it was communicating. It wanted us to know we weren't welcome. The fear was no longer just in our heads. Subtlety ended. The house wanted to terrify us. One day Sarah found green slime oozing from behind a crucifix. It smelled of decay, and no cleaning could erase the stain. The air grew heavier, doors slammed with violent force. We heard footsteps when no one was there, sometimes even a marching band echoing through the house. Whispers became voices, clear, hissing, "Get out!" The children were terrified. Leo said a voice told him to hurt us. We all slept together, but there was no safety. Objects moved, chairs turned, knives arranged, a rocking chair moving on its own. The house was showing its power, controlling everything inside. We weren't just haunted, we were prisoners. The walls bled, the whispers mocked us. Every day the house grew bolder. We realized escape might be impossible. The house was alive, and it wanted us broken. The terror spread outside. Mia screamed one night, pointing at her window. "The pig!" I saw them too, glowing red eyes filled with hatred staring from the darkness. The entity appeared more often, a pig-like head with burning eyes. We tried to board up the windows, but the feeling of being watched never left. The house was a fortress, guarded by something evil. We were besieged, drained, and turning on each other. Shadows moved in the corners, no longer tricks of the light. One night Sarah and I saw a tall, faceless figure at the end of the hall. It dissolved into the wall, leaving us paralyzed. The house was destroying us from the inside out. We knew we were facing something beyond reason. Our love was being consumed by fear. The final night was chaos. The house shook. A deafening roar filled the air. Black ooze dripped from the walls. Demonic screams replaced whispers. Furniture levitated. Books flew. The crucifix spun upside down. The air was freezing, breath visible. An unseen force slammed me against the wall. The entity was done playing. It wanted us gone or dead. The staircase twisted. Black ooze bubbled from the floor. The front door ripped off its hinges. That was our chance. We ran, not looking back. We left everything behind: furniture, clothes, dreams. The house seemed to grin as we fled. We drove until sunrise, desperate to escape. Our nightmare was over, but the haunting wasn't. The house had won. Afterward, we had nothing, refugees from our own lives. No one believed us. They offered logical explanations. But we knew what we'd survived. The trauma bonded us, but isolated us too. We never went back, not even for our most precious things. Our lives mattered more than possessions. The memories haunted us: slamming doors, cold drafts, nightmares. The fear became part of our family. We moved far away, but I still wake at 3:15 a.m., heart pounding. The terror faded but never left. Every year on the anniversary we get a call. No voice, just static. If you listen closely, you hear a rocking chair moving in an empty room. The echo of Amityville is always there. Some doors never close. Have you ever been alone in the dead of night, unable to see your own hand, and felt a cold breath on your neck? A whisper of movement, or worse, a touch? A cold, unseen finger tracing your spine, bypassing your skin and sinking into your soul? You tell yourself it's just your imagination, but deep down you know you're not alone. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. It's what happened to us at the Bell family farm. My name is Richard. I was a farmhand just trying to make a life in Adams, Tennessee, in 1817. Before the darkness, our lives were simple, ruled by the land and the seasons. The Bell farm was a beacon of prosperity, built by John Bell, his wife Lucy, and their children. We believed in God, hard work, and the goodness of our neighbors. We had no reason to believe in anything else. We were naive. The evil that awoke began subtly, like a sickness before symptoms appear. Days were filled with the sounds of the farm, nights with peace and the wind in the corn. We felt safe, protected by our faith and sturdy log walls. But that peace was an illusion, a veil waiting to be torn. We had no words for what we were about to experience. The events that unfolded would test our sanity, our faith, and our will to survive. The entity that attached itself to the Bell family was not a fleeting shadow. It was intelligent, it was malevolent, and it was just getting started. It wanted us to feel its presence, to know its power, and to live in constant paralyzing fear. We thought we understood the world and its rules. We were wrong, so terribly wrong. The darkness had come for us, and it would not let go. The Bell homestead was carved from the wild Tennessee woods, 320 acres along the Red River. John Bell was respected, Lucy was the heart of the home, and their children were the farm's lifeblood. We rose with the sun, worked the land, and gathered by the fire at night. Lucy's Bible reading soothed us after long days. We believed that righteous living would bring blessings. Our community was close, relying on each other for help and celebration. We were proud pioneers building a new world together. The idea of evil lurking in our paradise was unthinkable. Yet local tribes spoke of sacred land and powerful spirits. We dismissed these as superstition, never considering we might be trespassers. Our ignorance would be our undoing. The peaceful life we built was about to shatter. The first sign was subtle, yet chilling. One autumn evening, John Bell saw a creature in the cornfield. Body of a dog, head like a rabbit, eyes glowing with intelligence. It stared at him, unmoving. He fired his rifle. The creature vanished. Shaken, John tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light, but unease lingered. He told no one, hoping it was an isolated event. But that night, the real terror began. A faint, rhythmic knocking echoed from the cabin's walls. It became the dreadful heartbeat of our haunting. The beast in the cornfield was just the beginning. The knocking grew louder, more insistent, circling the house. We were being watched. The foundation of our reality had cracked. The darkness had fixed its gaze on the Bell family, and it was only getting started. That night none of us slept. The knocking became a nightly ritual, always returning with the darkness. We searched for the source, but found nothing. Only silence outside and terror within. Soon, the sounds evolved, dragging chains, heavy thuds on the roof, whispers from the corners. The air grew cold and heavy, charged with malevolence. The most disturbing sound was choking, gurgling, desperate everywhere and nowhere. We were no longer safe in our own home. An unseen intruder had breached our walls. The nightly symphony of horror was only growing stronger. The entity soon focused its cruelty on 12-year-old Betsy. Her bedclothes were ripped away, her hair yanked by invisible hands, red handprints blooming on her cheeks. Betsy was pinched, pricked, and sometimes thrown from her bed. Our prayers seemed to make it angrier. Betsy, once vibrant, became a shadow, her days filled with dread, her nights with terror. The entity was a predator, and Betsy was its chosen victim. John Bell, desperate, confided in neighbor James Johnson. Johnson, skeptical, agreed to spend the night. He witnessed the knocking, the chains, the slaps. Betsy's torment was undeniable. News spread quickly. The Bell Witch became a local legend. Neighbors and strangers crowded our home, hoping to witness the supernatural. The entity performed for them, yanking covers, slapping children, filling the house with terror. Visitors left shaken, their skepticism shattered. We became an attraction, but when the crowds left, we remained, trapped with the evil. The Bell Witch reveled in the attention. Our private nightmare had become a public spectacle, but for us, there was no escape. The entity grew bolder, its whispers turning into clear, mocking words. It quoted sermons, twisted scripture, and laughed coldly at our prayers. Our faith, once a shield, now felt hollow. The entity revealed secrets, sowed suspicion, and called us by name in the dark. It knew everything, our thoughts, our past, our fears. It taunted John Bell, obsessed over Betsy, and mocked Lucy's kindness. The presence was no longer just a disturbance, it was a vindictive, intelligent evil, dismantling us from within. We were under siege, not just in body, but in spirit. The Bell Witch was now a personality, cruel, relentless, and inescapable. On a storm-lashed night, the entity's rage erupted. The house shook, the air turned icy, and Betsy screamed. She was lifted from her chair, hair pulled back, slammed down, red marks and scratches appearing on her skin. We watched, helpless, as invisible blows landed. John shouted for the demon to stop, but his voice was drowned by shrieks and laughter. This was a new level of violence. Blood was drawn, wounds left behind. Betsy collapsed, trembling and sobbing. Silence fell, the storm pausing outside. The entity had shown its true power, and then, in the dead silence, it spoke. In the silence after Betsy's attack, a new sound emerged, a voice clear and cold, from nowhere and everywhere. "I am here," it declared, a chilling statement of presence and power. The Bell Witch had found its voice. The haunting was now a direct confrontation with a conscious, malevolent being. The voice spoke in riddles, mocked hymns, and promised to torment John Bell. It claimed to be a spirit seeking vengeance, disturbed from its rest. It was here to stay. Our ordeal was only beginning. The Bell Witch became a permanent presence, its voice haunting our every moment. I share this not just as history, but as a warning. Evil is real. There are forces we do not understand. The spirit that terrorized the Bell family may still be waiting, watching, hunting for its next victim.